Have you ever stopped to think that some of humanity's greatest mysteries could fit in the palm of your hand? That's right, tiny objects, often overlooked during excavations or tucked away in museums, hold secrets so grand that they still leave scientists and historians jaw-dropped. Imagine finding a piece of metal the size of a coin and realizing it could completely change what we know about ancient technology. It's like stumbling upon something seemingly trivial and discovering that in fact you're facing an enigma that challenges centuries of knowledge. And we're not talking about gigantic relics or imposing structures, but rather things so small they could go unnoticed in anyone's pocket. Engraved stones, amulets, mechanisms, miniatures, each one carries clues about how our ancestors thought, created, and even dreamed of the future. It's astonishing to think that civilizations without electricity or the internet were already producing gadgets so advanced they seem to have come from a modern laboratory. And the most curious part, often they didn't even realize they were paving the way for discoveries that would only be understood thousands of years later. So, get ready. Today we're diving into a fascinating journey through the tiny objects of the past that hide gigantic secrets. And I'll warn you, the smaller the object, the bigger the shock of the revelation. Now tell me, have you ever seen an ancient artifact up close? Write it in the comments, because I want to hear about your discoveries too. Imagine being on a ship, sailing through the Mediterranean Sea and suddenly finding something that looks like a machine. That's exactly what happened in the early 20th century when Greek divers discovered what seemed to be just a pile of corroded bronze. Only after decades of study did they realize it was the Antikythera mechanism, a tiny contraption compared to the monumental structures of ancient Greece, but one that holds secrets that defy logic. This artifact, about the size of a small shoebox, is considered by many to be the first computer in history. That's right, a computer, created over 2,000 years ago. Its gears and dials could predict eclipses, calculate the positions of planets, and even anticipate Olympic cycles. Isn't that mind-blowing? Now hold on to this. Scientists believe the mechanism was so precise that something comparable wouldn't be replicated in Europe for over 1,000 years. It's as if futuristic technology had appeared in the wrong place and time. And the strangest part is that no one knows for sure who built it, how this technique emerged, or why it was lost in the dust of history. After all, how many other secrets like this have been forgotten at the bottom of the sea or buried in the ground? But hold on, because this is just the first stop on our journey. The next object is even smaller and more enigmatic. Now, imagine something so tiny it fits on the tip of your fingers, but has been puzzling archaeologists for over a century. I'm talking about the golden Tirona figurines found in Colombia. At first glance, they seem like mere decorative miniatures made of gold. But when you look closely, the shock is immediate. They strikingly resemble modern airplanes. The pieces have wings, vertical tails, and even fuselages that look like they came out of a hangar. And here comes the inevitable question: how could a pre-Columbian people, who had never seen an airplane, create miniatures so similar to flying machines? Coincidence? Inspiration from birds and insects? Or something far more mysterious? The most curious part is that in the 1970s, aviation engineers built larger-scale replicas of these miniatures. And guess what? They actually flew. Yes, these 1,000-year-old golden airplanes had functional aerodynamics. Of course, the most accepted explanation among archaeologists is that the objects represented stylized animals, like fish or insects. But it's hard to deny that their resemblance to aircraft is eerie. After all, what would lead an ancient civilization to create something so similar to a technology that would only emerge centuries later? It's the kind of enigma that makes us scratch our heads and wonder, did our ancestors know more about the skies than we imagine? And if you think that's surprising, wait until you hear about the next object. It's as small as a grain of rice, but holds a secret capable of rewriting entire chapters of history. Now get ready for something truly microscopic: the Ural nanospirals discovered in Russia. These tiny objects, some smaller than a strand of hair, were found in the 1990s during excavations near the Ural Mountains. At first glance, they seemed like insignificant bits of metal, but when scientists examined them under a microscope, They realized they were dealing with spiral-shaped structures made of metal alloys like copper and tungsten. And here's where the mystery begins. These pieces are so small and precise that they resemble components of modern nanotechnology. The catch: they were found in soil layers dated to over 300,000 years ago. How is that possible? Long before any known civilization existed. The first reaction was to consider modern contamination, but repeated tests showed that the structures were indeed embedded in ancient sediments. So where did they come from? Could they be remnants of a lost civilization, signs of extraterrestrial visitors, or just incredibly strange natural formations? To this day, there's no consensus. The official explanation wavers between unusual geological phenomena and remnants of some kind of experiment that ended up in the soil. But the question remains: how could something so small, so advanced, and so ancient simply exist there, in the middle of nowhere? It's the kind of discovery that leaves us with a nagging suspicion. After all, if microscopic objects like these appear underground, what else might be hidden beneath our feet? And hold on to this: the next item isn't microscopic, but its precision defies all logic of antiquity. Now let's return to ancient Greece, but with a detail that will leave you speechless. The Phaistos disc. Imagine an object the size of a CD made of clay, but carrying an enigma that no one has fully deciphered to this day. This disc was found on the island of Crete in the early 20th century and has since become one of humanity's greatest archaeological mysteries. Its surface is covered with spiral symbols, carefully pressed into the clay with what appear to be stamps, as if it was some kind of printer from the Bronze Age. We're talking about over 200 different signs, organized like a text, but in a language that doesn't resemble any other ever recorded. And here's the question: is it a primitive form of writing, a calendar, a religious manual, or even a secret code? To this day, no hypothesis has been definitively confirmed. The most intriguing part is thinking that the disc might be one of the first human attempts to standardize symbols, something reminiscent of typographic printing, but done almost 2,000 years before Gutenberg invented the modern press. Isn't it as if someone had fast-forwarded the clock of history? And the curious detail: to this day, no other similar object has been found. The Phaistos disc is unique, solitary, like a message lost in time. Now hold your curiosity, because the next object is even more surprising. A relic so small it seems like a toy, but may have been used in real battles. Imagine being on a medieval battlefield and, instead of seeing massive swords or heavy spears, stumbling upon a tiny weapon that looks more like a toy. Well, archaeologists have found miniature crossbows and catapults that fit in the palm of your hand. And the mystery is, were they just decorative models, or could they actually be used in combat? Some of these pieces, discovered in Europe, are so detailed and functional that they can shoot tiny metal arrows with enough force to pierce wood. This raises the suspicion that they weren't just models, but rather actual scaled-down weapons, perhaps used for training or even by children. Yes, children, which sounds downright chilling. Other scholars believe these miniatures could have served as prototypes to test mechanisms before building their full-sized counterparts. It makes sense, after all. Engineers back then didn't have computers to simulate anything. Every gear had to be tested in practice. Now hold on to this. Some of these objects are so perfectly crafted that they still work, even after centuries buried underground. Can you picture the scene? An archaeologist pulls a tiny piece from the dirt, draws the string, and twang, the little arrow flies. The most fascinating part is that these models give us a glimpse into the inventive minds of the time, showing that medieval engineering was anything but lacking in creativity and precision. But believe me, the next object on our list is even smaller and might have been used as technological jewelry. Now let's move on to a find that seems straight out of science fiction: the Nimrud lenses discovered in Iraq. Imagine finding a piece of crystal the size of a coin and realizing it might have been used as a magnifying lens nearly 3,000 years ago. This small piece of polished quartz was found in 1850 in the palace of the ancient Assyrian city of Nimrud. It immediately caught attention. It has enough curvature and transparency to magnify images up to 3 times. Sounds minor. Well, for that era, it's simply unbelievable. Some archaeologists believe the lens was merely an ornament, perhaps part of a decorative instrument, but many scholars suggest it could have been used as an optical tool for engraving details on jewelry, reading tiny inscriptions, or even observing the sky. Yes, there's a theory that the Assyrians might have been experimenting with something akin to rudimentary telescopes. And there's more. This isn't the only ancient lens found. There are reports of similar pieces in different cultures, suggesting that the idea of manipulating light may have emerged much earlier than we were taught in school. Now think about this. If a civilization from nearly 3,000 years ago was already using lenses, how far could human scientific curiosity have gone if that knowledge had been widely developed back then? It's almost like imagining telescopes pointed at the stars long before Galileo. And if you thought that was surprising, hold on tight. The next object is so mysterious that it still fuels conspiracy theories. Now we come to one of the most intriguing finds of all, the so-called Baghdad stones, or better yet, the Baghdad batteries. Imagine finding a small ceramic pot, about the size of a clenched fist, and realizing it might have been an electric battery made over 2,000 years ago. These small containers discovered near Baghdad contain a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with acidic liquids like vinegar or lemon juice, they produce a low-voltage electric current. That's right, electricity in ancient times. But what was it used for? That's where the mystery kicks in. Some believe it was used in religious rituals, perhaps to deliver mild shocks and create magical effects for worshippers. Others suggest it could have been used for electroplating metals, a process of coating with gold or silver that wouldn't be officially documented for thousands of years. And of course there are the bolder theories, that they were part of a lost technological knowledge or even evidence of contact with civilizations far beyond our understanding. The most fascinating part is imagining that, while the world was still centuries away from understanding electricity, someone was already manipulating its secrets in small clay jars. It's as if a spark of the future had been ignited long before its time. And hold on, because we're not done yet. The next object is so small and detailed that it seems like a work of art, but it might also be a miniature map of the cosmos. Now, imagine holding an object so tiny in your hand, yet so full of detail that it seems to contain the entire universe within it. I'm talking about the stone spheres from South Africa, discovered in mines over 3 billion years old. Yes, you heard that right, billion with a B. These spheres, ranging from a few millimeters to a few centimeters, have perfectly carved grooves around them, as if someone had sculpted them with high-precision tools. The problem is that officially, at the time these formations appeared, humans didn't even exist on Earth. So how do we explain something like this? Scientists are still debating. Many claim they're merely natural formations, created by geological processes over millions of years. But others look at the symmetry and perfection of these spheres and can't help but wonder, are they really natural? Or could they be artifacts from a civilization so ancient it vanished without a trace? Some researchers even joke that they look like marbles of the gods. They're so perfect. But jokes aside, the enigma persists. After all, if they were natural, why do so many look like something intentionally crafted? It's the kind of mystery that makes us feel tiny in the face of the vastness of time. Because if creative hands were behind these spheres, we're talking about a history far older than we can imagine. And to wrap up our journey, the next object will tie everything together in grand style, showing how the tiniest things can indeed hold gigantic secrets. After traveling through so many centuries and civilizations, one thing becomes clear. No matter the size, objects from the past can carry secrets capable of turning our understanding upside down. From the Antikythera mechanism to the mysterious South African spheres, each tiny artifact is like an open window to worlds we thought we knew, but which still hide far more than we imagine. The most fascinating part is realizing that often it's the tiniest things, a crystal lens, a clay jar, a golden trinket, that challenge the limits of our knowledge. It's as if the past is whispering to us. The whole story hasn't been told yet. Now think about this. How many other objects must be buried, forgotten in caves, museums, or at the bottom of the oceans, waiting to rewrite what we know? Who knows, maybe one day, the next discovery will be so astonishing that it completely changes how we view humanity. These mysteries remind us of something powerful. We are curious by nature, and it's that curiosity that makes us look at a tiny object and see an entire universe of questions within it. So if you enjoyed this journey through the tiny objects that hide gigantic secrets, you know what to do. Give it a like, share the video with that curious friend, and subscribe to the channel to not miss the next incredible stories. And tell me in the comments which of these objects left you the most stunned. I want to know what your wow moment of the day was.